Good to see everybody. And this press conference means we're back into the routine. And that's kind of game week, that you go through camp, and now when the season starts, you start the routine of the game plans and what you got to get done on a Tuesday practice and a Wednesday practice. And I think we've had a really good camp. Came out of it relatively healthy. And I think all of our team, our staff is ready to play the first game. And always a lot of anxiety with the first game. It's the first time, a team goes out there together and the score counts. And I think there's some areas that we have an idea what we have, but there's things that always get exposed on the first game, and that starts the work. And certainly the challenge this year is with who we open with. Tulane was 5-7 a year ago, and depending on your perspective, they were an inch away or a sideline camera away from being a bowl team. So they've had to live with those 1 inch or 6 inches for 9 months, and it really starts with their head coach. I think Coach Fritz is one of the most underrated and honestly one of the best football coaches in the whole country. He's got over 200 career wins. He's won everywhere he's been. Everywhere he goes, they win. This is his 3rd year. This is a much deeper, much better, more talented football team than the one we played 2 years ago here at BB&T. And really, that was a game we were very fortunate to win. Really shouldn't have won the game. Probably got outplayed. Got very fortunate and lucky to win that game. And sometimes it's all you need is a win like that to get you going. And on offense, they've got 9 returning starters off of an offense that averaged 27.5 points a game, about 400 yards a game. They've got a returning senior quarterback in Jonathan Banks, who's a very talented football player. Threw the ball for about 1,800 yards a year ago, had 600 yards rushing, and he really had 800 yards rushing. And then if you take away the 200 yards for sack adjusted, so you're talking about a guy that was almost a 1,000-yard rusher and a 2,000-yard passer, and he was responsible for 19 touchdowns. So, if the basis of a good football team is a good, experienced play caller, Tulane has it. They have their top 3 receivers back, and Khalid Mooney and Clawson. Their tight end Jones is back. These guys are good players. The nature of their offense with their option-based attack is they create a lot of one-on-ones. And they have a quarterback and a receiving crew that can take advantage of it. Up front, they're very good. They've got 3 seniors, a redshirt junior, and a true sophomore playing for them. And these guys are experienced. So this is a very good offense that returns 9 starters, including a quarterback. And they're not an up-tempo offense, or at least they haven't been. So I think when you look at their numbers, it's even more impressive when you consider this is not a team that plays up-tempo. This is a team that, 2 years ago, there was 152 snaps in this whole football game, which last year at times that seemed like it was a little over a half for us. But again, 3 starters in the O-line, a grad transfer who had 25 starts at South Alabama. And this is probably the strength of their football team. On defense, they've got 6 returning starters. They've got 2 really good ones in the secondary with Donnie Lewis, their corner, with 31 starts. Roderick Teamer, the safety, has 25 starts. And their best linebacker, Zachary Harris, is back. He had 69 tackles a year ago. So, you're on the road. The American Athletic Conference is good football. This is the same conference that has Central Florida and South Florida. And this is a good league. They're used to playing good teams, and we're on the road. And this will be a really good challenge. So we'll be tested for sure. This will be a tough football game. This is not a game that, we need to play well. That we need to take care of the football and do well on special teams. And just with Coach Fritz, it's across the board that they don't do too much, but everything they do extremely well. They do it with great effort. You put every clip on, like you watch their field goal and PAT block, and there's games that they're down 2 or 3 scores, or they're up. The Tulsa game last year, I think they won by 34, and Tulsa scores late. and you watch them try to block the extra point, and it's 11 guys going hard. This is not a group that takes any plays off. This is a high effort, high energy group, which I think is a reflection of their head coach. And this will be a tough test for us. So again, we look forward to getting down there and having our first game as a team. And then after this one, we'll be home for a long time. So, but this would be a good one to get, but it'll be a challenge. Questions?
With the freshman quarterback and with the running backs that you have and the offensive line that you have, does it almost lend itself to believe that the game plan calls for 40 or 50 runs from you?
Well, I mean, if you watch us on film, I mean, we're a big RPO team. And, you know, how are we getting defended? I mean, you know, we don't run a style of offense with a fullback and 2 tight ends, you know, maybe like a Stanford or like a BC, that you're just going to say, well, hey, I don't care how we're going to get defended. We're going to get the extra hat in there. We're going to pound you. And, you know, we're a little bit more designed to see how we're defended. And we can certainly be defended in ways that would cause us to throw the ball more. And we have to run our offense. This is what we do. This is how it's designed. I think when it's executed at the level it was a year ago, but we're not designed to, you know, line up with 2 fullbacks and a tight end, and it's just not the way we are. So, you know, we're never going to go into a game saying that we're going to throw it 70 or run it 70. It's just not the design of the offense.
Looking at Hartman and the O-line, do you think that having such a great offensive line will help Hartman feel cooler under pressure, or do you think that's different for him?
No, I think there's no question. I mean, this is not John Wolford 2014. That's a true freshman quarterback starting behind an offensive line that's not as good as the one we have now. And again, and not to take anything away from that group. I mean, I think that group competed hard and tried hard. I just think, you know, right now we're an offensive line that has probably 3 or 4 NFL prospects on it, and we certainly weren't there 4 years ago. So there's no question that I think it's easier to play quarterback right now in our offense because of what we have on the O-line and what we have at running back and what we have at receiver. But anytime you start a true freshman quarterback, you know, it's baptism by fire. That, you know, you can practice it, you can practice it, you can practice it, but until they get under there in the game and play for the first time, it's always new and different.
If this Thursday night game was, say, scheduled in the middle of the season, how much more difficult do you think it would be to prepare for an option-based offense like the one that Willie Fritz runs here?
Yeah, it's one of those offenses that if it's not your opener, you probably have to devote practice time in camp. No different than Georgia Tech or Army or this is a very, very tough preparation period, let alone if you had a short week. So, you know, when we play Army or Georgia Tech, we always take time in the spring and in fall camp to do some work against that offense unless it's the opener or unless we have a bye week before we play the game. But just the nature of what they do requires extra preparation, and just the amount of formations and the amount of motions and the different backfield sets they get into and the unbalanced. You know, there's 2 challenges when you play a team like this. Number one is just getting lined up, because you name the formation, they run it. And number 2 is having great eye discipline, because it is an offense that if you put your eyes in the wrong place, next thing you know, the option's out or the quarterback's unaccounted for or the pitch or whatever. And this is how they make big plays, is that, you know, they get you to misfit stuff because they make it a challenge to get aligned. And then the ball just squirts out, and the next thing you know, it's 40 yards down the field.
But since it is the opener, how early did you expose some of the schemes? And
well, you know, some of the concepts that they run, we run. We don't major in those things. We minor in them. So we took periods in camp that, you know, we do a period that we call dealer's choice, that the first offense will go against the second defense, and we'll run some concepts we're going to face during the year that maybe we don't do on a regular basis. And then we flip it, and then the second offense will run plays against the first defense that we were running, not necessarily two-lane plays, but two-lane concepts in terms of formations, motions, things like that, so that when you get into the game plan, you're not saying, hey, this is all brand new. This is completely a new defense. You want to be able to play your defense, but at the same time, the nature of what we're going against doesn't allow you to just play your defense. You got to make some tweaks, and that's always a challenge.
How important is linebacker play for you in reading what that offense is doing on a play-by-play basis?
Well, it's big in terms of it's everybody in the second level has to have their eyes in the right place. So it's linebacker, it's the rover, it's the corner, it's the safeties. That if they get caught up with their eyes in the backfield and they're not looking at their keys, it's just a matter of time before somebody springs loose. And I think whenever you play an option team, whether it be Army or Georgia Tech or a team like this, that they create so many dilemmas for you that every play can be a triple option with the threat of a play action. And I say this every time we play an option team, just a lot of those defensive concepts of pursuit, running to the football and all that, you want your defense to have a mentality in terms of how they're going to play and how they're going to pursue, and then you play an offense like this, you're like, well, slow down. What did your key do? And that's where they trick you. And they figure out what your keys are, and then they use your keys against you. So they'll have misdirection stuff, and they'll have, a speed option play that the back will go opposite, and they try to get you a player short doing that. And they know what they're doing. Like I said, they're an extremely well-coached football team. They know their offense. There's certain things they'll do with formations or motions and kind of probe you and see how you're handling things. And based on what you do, they know what they're going to come back with. So things are sequenced for them.
Kind of gathered that Banks kind of caught his stride in the second half of last season, is that right? Are they a much different team than what they were even to start off the 2017 season? Well,
they got off to a decent start last year, and they had some big wins early. But a lot of the film that we've watched is later in the year, and whether it be the SMU game or this is a team that beat a 10-win Army team. They lost to Navy early in the year before Navy got injured by 2 points. Navy beat them by 2, but that was a very competitive game. So they moved the ball against good people. I believe even the Oklahoma game was competitive up for a while. I think it was at one point 21-14. So, they play Ohio State. They played Oklahoma. They've played good teams. They're certainly not going to be intimidated for sure. They weren't 2 years ago. I went back and watched that game about a week ago, and I got nervous watching it again. And I knew the result of it, and I still got. We were so lucky. We really were. They had some opportunities for plays that we cut people loose, and the one 3rd and 20, we had 2 guys come out of coverage, and if their guy doesn't fall down, they probably beat us 10-7. So.
You mentioned last week on your radio show that you kind of develop a feel for your team throughout the course of a season and adjust to those things. I'm curious how much of an open mind you enter the season with to figure those things out, and how much of a feel you get for that in fall camp.
I think you come out of it, a fall camp, with a gut feeling that you say, okay, this is where we're really good. This is where you're young and have a big upside, and this might be a deficiency. And as the year plays out, those things can change. They usually don't drastically change, but sometimes you may come out of it and you discover you have a Greg Dortch. We went into last year that Greg wasn't even starting, and at a midpoint through the season, at times he was the best player on the field. So those are always the pleasant surprises. The unpleasant surprises are always injuries. They're going to happen, you don't know when, and you don't know where. And all those things cause you to, what I call midstream adjust. That you go into it with a plan, and this is where you're good. Relatively speaking, this might not be as good, and you got to do things to try to highlight that and not get that exposed, and you have to have a plan, and then it can be week 4 and those things can flip due to an injury or due to a player stepping up, or maybe a player doesn't play at the level you think. So that's all the flow of the season.
Speaking of your radio show, I heard you had a pretty controversial opinion on hot wings, chicken wings.
Well, I don't know if it's controversial. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, Western New York, and I think the term buffalo wing has been stretched too far outside of the Western New York area. So I don't agree with the concept of Parmesan or barbecue or those things being called buffalo wings. There's only one buffalo wing, and those are hot wings. So I hope that's the most amount of controversy that I generate this year.
Also yesterday, Larry Fedora was talking about the paranoia.
About buffalo wings? Okay.
But about the paranoia he has about, keeping his practices closed and not wanting opponents access to information. You choose to keep your practices during camp open to the media. What went into that decision? I like Les and Connor, so I wanted to let those guys do their job. I don't know, it's probably, to be honest with you, just a little bit of how I came up in the profession. That, I worked at schools like Fordham and Richmond and Bowling Green, and, we wanted media coverage. We wanted people to cover us and to get to know our team. And, I think when you come up like that, you get to know, we're not a place that no matter what, there's going to be 60, 80 people covering us. So I've always tried to get to know the media, and I have an appreciation for the job that you have and Connor has and Les has, and we want you guys to be able to do your jobs and to do your professions. And I think that there's a professionalism that's involved and a trust that's developed, and that trust has not been violated here by these members of the media. Obviously, we had that trust violated really by one of our own, and that's why we close practices during game week, is that we don't want people seeing the trick play or the defensive adjustment. But for our spring practices and fall camp practices that we're just preparing our guys and doing our base install, we have no issue with it. We're very comfortable with people watching what we're doing, but it's not completely open. I mean, not anybody can come off the street and watch it, that you have to have credentials and be part of the working media or be a former player. We'll let a parent come in and watch practice, but it's not anybody.
What went into the decision to choose Sam Hartman? How did he make himself stand out?
Well, it was very competitive. Him and Jamie, I think both of them probably, we had high expectations for both of them, and I think they both played better than what we thought. And so it became a very hard decision. And when Jamie got a little nicked up, it kind of, it made the decision a little bit easier, but it was still very competitive. We've had that here every year except the first year when we started John as a true freshman. That was really the only year that it wasn't competitive. So I'm sorry, that's me. And it is my wife, and today's her 50th birthday. Yeah. Hey, honey. No, I'm in a press conference, and I just told everybody here it's your 50th birthday, so I had to take the call. Okay. Hey, can I finish this, and then I'll call you back when I'm done? Okay. All right, sweetie. Bye. Bye.
I think you just earned some points there.
Yeah, it's her 50th today, so. So I take calls for 2 reasons. My wife, or if other people, if your phone goes off.
Dave, officially it's your 49th. Women don't like to turn 50.
Oh, okay. I may have lost points.
You threw them away. You had them and you just threw them away.
Yeah, I lost points.
Dave, after I think it was the first scrimmage, you talked about decision-making for the quarterbacks in the tempo. How comfortable are you with Sam going into the game?
Very comfortable. I mean, he's played well in camp. He's been very consistent.
again, he's not going to be perfect, no quarterback is, but he has played very consistently for us, and there's no reason to believe he won't continue to do that. So, I mean, we're very confident that he'll play well, and I mean, he's not a guy that seems to get easily rattled. So he's been through a lot, and just to be here, and he's handled himself with a lot of maturity and a lot of confidence and a lot of poise, and I don't think those things suddenly disappear when you get to a game.
I think last time we were in this room together, it was signing day. You mentioned taking the next step as a program. What does that entail this year?
Well, what is the next step? You know, I think that's like a little cliche of what is the next step. I mean, you know, to me, one of the next step just for Wake Forest football is to sustain and get back to another bowl and have another winning season. And you look at the history of Wake Forest football, and you know, since we joined the ACC, there's been these blips of success, and you know, the best run was Jim Grobe from 06 to 08. And you know, we would like to be a team that every year that we're in contention and get into bowls, and it doesn't become a shock to people. But there's still teams in our conference that since we've been here we haven't beat. We haven't beat Clemson. We haven't beat Florida State. Those are really the elite of our conference. And if you want to win the league, at some time you got to beat them. And at the same time, you know, Syracuse is better, BC's better, Louisville's not going anywhere, NC State is really good, and I think, you know, some people feel may have the best quarterback in the league this year and have a good offense. So, you know, just you want to get better, you want to take the next step, but at the same time, I mean, every single game you play in this conference is against good football teams. And, you know, so we want to get back to a bowl. We want to have a winning season. We want to compete to be the ACC champions. Part of it is just keeping those goals alive into November, so you put yourself in that situation. And we have an ACC game in September and then one in October before the bye, and you know, if you don't find a way to win one of those games, you're probably out of that race already. So every one of those games is critical, but you know, a season, you know, it's a process, and you know, this is a big game for us. I mean, if we want to be a bowl team and have a winning record and be a team that's at some point nationally ranked, all of these games are important.
What's Jamie's status still? I think you said last night, hopeful he'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, we're hopeful that he's doing a lot more, and it might be one of those game time decisions that, you know, hopefully we can play the game and we don't need him, which would mean Sam plays well and stays healthy. But the goal is to try to get him ready in case we do need him. And we're still, you know, over 48 hours away. He's living in the training room, and hopefully we'll get him there.